It's fine.
Hey everybody, Hykiri's back for a special podcast with my boy over here, Mr. Shenbolt, damn Canadians, and our buddy, the Cripple. We gotta check out Shin on Twitch and show him some love. And we're gonna do for the question, and we both answer it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, yeah, why is this? Alright, you up, Crip?
All right. So I have a bunch of questions,
Okay.
and so I'll just go through them like one at a time, and I guess Hikari can go first, and then just into.
Okay.
I don't know how we determine who wins. I guess I'll just say who has the better argument or
Yes.
stream well. So
Yes, that works.
I feel like I'm at a disadvantage here since I didn't get the questions in advance.
nobody did.
Nobody did.
What kind of
Well,
debate is
we're
this?
not
I think I should
Canadian.
get the questions in advance for that kind of stuff. All right. Okay.
All right. So in your own words, describe the state of wrestling as you see it today. Is it flourishing or floundering?
Flourishing. I think
Okay,
with
why?
all the developmental camps, NXT, whatever AEW does, all the indie camps, especially around the world, there's tons of new talent, tons of new stars, some we haven't even seen yet. And I'm sure a lot of new champions are going to be performed and created over, I don't know, next 5 years. I don't see wrestling, as superstars diminishing right now.
All right. Same. Do I need to repeat the question?
No, I don't need to repeat the question. I actually don't think either one of those fits the current business as it is. It's not floundering or flourishing at the moment. It's probably closer to stagnating. If you look at the way, just by looking at how like gates and terms of people watching and people doing everything else, it's pretty samey for the last 6 to 8 months. Before that, I would have said it was floundering. At this point, it's too early to call for me to tell if it's going to be getting better or worse. I don't think I think that wrestling for the most part is hit its cap in terms of finding a new audience and finding people that want to watch. At least for now, they haven't figured out the I don't know. They haven't figured out the way to get younger people to watch it at this point. Is what I'd say, or I shouldn't say younger people as much as like teens to watch at this point yet.
Okay.
So we'll see how it goes. I think that the merger between UFC and WWE will tell the story of how that fares, whether wrestling will be floundering or flourishing in the next 5 years.
Both really good arguments. Okay. Wow. You guys are really thinking about it a lot now. Okay. So in the terms of wrestling, is long-term storytelling good for wrestling as in WWE and AEW? Or do you think with the audience they need more turnover? Just give a yes or no, but also then give an example.
I'll let Shin go first.
No problem. Um, we. I'm not gonna say everyone knows that wrestling is better in long term storyline. It's not kind of how it goes. It's generally speaking, long term storylines are better. I don't think AEW is really doing anything too long term right now. As much as I like to watch AEW, it's just I don't see that coming in. If you want an example of what not long term booking looks like, you can just look at 1998 to 2001 WCW and tell me how well that went.
He's got a good point. That's about the time I stopped watching WCW.
I think long term storytelling is best. Look at the Bloodline storyline. There's nothing better in wrestling than Roman Reigns in the bloodline right now. There's no better story. It is a true long-term story. There's nothing like this in AEW, TNA, Indies. Wrestling fans always want a long-term story, and now we have it, and they don't want it. I think long-term wrestling is good for the core base fans, but you can't please the marks because they don't know what they want. The marks always say they want long-term champions. You give them Roman Reigns, then they complain. But if it was Brock Lesnar, that was world champion right now, wrestling 4 times, maybe 5 times a year, the crowd would be okay with that. Even though Roman is worlds better as a wrestler and champion and storyteller than Brock Lesnar is. I don't think this long-term story would be better with anyone other than Roman. He has made this story. He has shown fans that not only is he a good champion and able to maintain 900 whatever days, but he can also tell a story for 900 days. And that's good for business.
I want to put a little rebuttal in. I want to say right now, I would much rather see what's happening with CM Punk as a long-term storyline than ever say anything about Roman Reigns as a long-term storyline.
Well, I mean, the evolution of Roman kind of became stagnant. I'll say this about Roman: it became stagnant when The Rock saved him at the Royal Rumble. But to repackage what he is and what he's done over the last 900 days is a good example of an everyday champion versus a part-time champion. So I'll give you that. I'll agree with the storytelling from WCW too, because that was around the time that I stopped watching it when I was younger. So you both have very different views, which makes it interesting because wrestling is a different view from anywhere you're viewing it. All right, so third question is with WWE focusing on Division 1 athletes, will this hurt their company or help their company as they try to focus on fixing what I believe Stephanie McMahon said, fixing bad wrestling habits when signing wrestlers?
You want it, Shin?
Hykiri.
Okay. I think wrestling needs wrestlers. I don't think we need to bring in, football players, basketball players, UFC wrestlers. Wrestlers need to be wrestlers from the indie scene. They know how to wrestle. Maybe not, the WWE style, but they still know wrestling. It's going to be bad with this new partnership because we'll have more UFC guys trying to be wrestlers when the wrestling world just wants wrestlers. We don't need guys like Tyson Fury or all these other stars. Mind you, Logan Paul and Bad Bunny have been very, very good. But still, I would like to see more actual wrestlers become superstars instead of these wannabe wrestlers getting a name for themselves while trying to become a wrestler. Much like AEW's Jade Cargill. She's so green as she's a champion. It just doesn't work.
Okay. I I can agree with your argument. I see it a little bit different, but all right, same question.
Um, in the long run, honestly, whether they use the NIL athletes or not, it's not going to make too much of a difference. It's my honest opinion.
Okay.
Whether they get good or they don't get good in their NXT days or their whatever or their training, will always make the difference of who's going to make it or not. It's already been shown that wrestling takes on athletes anyways, whether they get them young or old. If you just look at like even right nowadays, how many other athletes are still in WWE or even AEW. Look, AEW just picked up Satnam Singh, right? He's a former basketball star.
Right.
Whether they picked him up because he's a big draw in India, or he could be a big draw in India, or not, he's a former athlete. It's the same for a lot of athletes. Wasn't almost a football player or a basketball player or something like that? Like there's so many guys who came from
But Omos is
other
bad.
backgrounds as well. There's been staff wrestling for a long time. It's always been wrestlers who come in, wrestlers, football players, Olympic wrestlers, basketball stars. It really doesn't matter where they're coming from. Now they just want to get them early. I don't think it's going to help any. In general, they've already shown that the percentage that actually make it through from athlete to wrestling is negligible at best. It's like under 5 or 10%.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you're looking to pick up someone who had no interest in wrestling until they found out they can make money off wrestling. So not exactly the best person to be leading your company for the next 10, 15 years, someone who just is in it for the money only, as opposed to someone who wants to be there because they dreamed of being a wrestler.
Okay. Yeah. So I asked this question because I follow Division One. I follow college sports. So I don't know if you, that I want to point out about your argument. I don't know if you guys see that now college athletes get paid for their likeness as well. So it's another way for them to build brand from college days. Okay, I think WWE sees it as they can bring a whole new audience that follows this one athlete into our company as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all knew that or not. That's why I asked that specific question.
I know they're able to get paid for their likenesses now. It's been a big thing that's been going on for the last 5 to 10 years, I imagine, at this point. No, sorry, not getting paid for it, but the fight for the ability to get paid for it.
Yeah, the last 2 years they've been able to do it
I
now.
still don't know if you'll be able to bring over as many fans as they hope for. In that terms, if we're talking like the terms of like which was it, the gymnast there that has all the creepy followers. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. I want to say Olivia something. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. If we're talking about that, you might be able to draw in some of the creepy fans that come by, but I don't know if you're going to draw in the majority of her fans. It's
Right.
like how many of the low gang followed Logan Paul to anything besides like his specific matches and stayed around.
Right. You're right.
Yeah. So there's a lot of moving parts. Okay. Y'all both had good arguments. I think it's more going to be like a meat grinder with the athletes. They're just going to like churn them out like
100%.
yeah. So with AEW, it's always been a topic of debate when it comes to wrestling fans. Should AEW be seen as a competitor to WWE or an alternative to WWE?
I'll let Shen take this one.
I mean, I think you're just using two different words to describe the same issue here. Honestly, how can an alternative not be a competitor to WWE?
Well, I say alternative and competitor is, are they competing strictly with WWE or are they just giving a wrestling audience an alternative to that style?
Let's just call it what it is, okay? Like every person I'm not gonna say every person, 90% of the people who watch AEW also watch WWE. That's all it comes down to. there's no other parts of where else would you get the audience from? You think there's a million other people each week that watch wrestling that don't watch WWE? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I like when you say alternative or competitor.
We can say it as like think of WCW versus
Sure.
Raw, Nitro and Raw. There were people that strictly only watched Nitro. There's people that strictly only watched Raw. So how much of an audience is there? Is AEW just an alternative, or are they going to really compete with?
AEW is not an alternative to WWE. It's not far enough away. It's not different enough. It's not anything else. It's two sides of the same coin. We're talking about AEW and WWE. If you want an alternative to WWE or AEW, you're gonna have to look into like something like GCW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Joshi Wrestling, anything that's not like standard. Hood Slam, for instance. Like you have to find something that's different than what WWE and AEW offer. They're different enough to each other, sure, but they're not alternatives to each other.
Okay.
So if you want to call that competitors, feel free. I don't think they're competing as much as anything else. They're not on the same times. They share the week for what it's worth. They don't have the same networks. The networks literally cannot pick up with each of them, so they're not really competing in that way either. With AEW and working with Endeavor, doesn't Endeavor own like ESPN or something like that? I'm not sure what Endeavor owns at this point.
I'm not sure if it's ESPN. I think Disney owns ESPN. So Endeavor, I'm not quite sure who Endeavor owns yet.
At the same time, you have Peacock when they have their deal with Peacock, and I'm sure the deal will come up and they'll find something else, or they'll go with Peacock again. But Peacock will never look for both AEW and WWE, so it won't ever be true competition like that. Even TNA, when they tried to compete with WWE, wasn't true competition like that. It was very much them sharing the week.
Okay.
I think it's an alternative. I don't see AEW having enough star power to be true competition with WWE. I don't feel like it's WCW versus WWF like it was. I think AEW would be more in competition with TNA instead of WWE because they kind of match more of the same audience. AEW and TNA emphasize on wrestling, whereas WWE emphasizes more on storytelling. So I think from Monday nights to Wednesday night, it's a completely different type of show. I don't think it's competition. I think it's alternative. I mean, if you want to watch, or just watch a 60-minute Iron Man match between MJF and Bryan Danielson. There's a great match, for 60 minutes, and then, the overtime. If you're wrestling, but not much storytelling, you give me a one-fall match between Roman and, like, Cody Rhodes, and it was a great wrestling match. Maybe not on the same level as Danielson and MJF, but the wrestling was great. But it also had amazing storytelling. Same when Roman fought Sami Zayn. I think the storytelling was on par to what they were doing in the ring. Their wrestling was able to tell that story as much as the promos. And that's why the storyline has been so successful, for the past whatever. The only alternatives that have a difference would be the company Shin said, and things like Choco Pro, where you're wrestling in a little back room on a wrestling mat. While that's entertaining, that's a true alternative to what wrestling is. But I don't see AEW as a competitor either. Not with WWE.
I mean, they're not competitors. Like they don't compete for the same eyes. They don't compete for the same money. They don't compete for anything.
They do though.
They don't have live events in the same
in
town.
the same business. So I mean, it's still competition.
It is
But it's
competition,
not with-
but it's not a competitor.
Right.
I see it also as an alternative because Tony Khan has said that he wants to compete, but I don't think AEW ever will.
They're close enough in the ratings, at least right now, compared to what they should be doing.
Yeah.
After 3 years, that you should hope they should be competition. Honestly enough, like more than anything, I don't want WWE to die. Whether I like watching WWE or not, You want true competition. Like the problem with WWE over the last 20 years is they had no competition.
Exactly. I will agree with you on that.
So I don't want either company to go out of business. I'm very happy with both doing what they do.
As we speak about AEW, this question comes personally from me. Like, this is what I've always wondered how other people felt about. Is Tony Khan the reason AEW isn't a competitor for WWE? Like, specifically his influence.
I think Tony Khan is a good business guy. He can make good decisions. But right now, he's just writing checks to anybody who wants to be in the company. He's hiring people from promotions all over the world, and his roster is just too big. Although WWE's roster is getting a little big as well, but I think WWE still manages enough difference in usage of their wrestlers to show those storylines. Whereas AEW, with all the wrestlers that they're pouring in, you may see one storyline and not hear about it for 2 weeks. The rosters are just too big. And the story they're telling, once they tell the story, they drop that wrestler. Look at the whole angle with the Jericho appreciation and Ricky Starks. That's a great story. Then when Ricky Starks won, he's just been dropped. Like what he's doing now. You beat Chris Jericho, and now you're nothing. That just makes no sense. So I think storytelling is a big problem for AEW, and I don't believe Tony Khan understands how it works. So his lack of knowledge on how to run the company as entertainment is making it suffer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean Tony Khan's family, or he gets his business
Right.
wherewithal, honestly, but I think his lack of understanding of wrestling hinders it. Hinders AEW. Okay, same question.
I mean, unlike WWE, AEW is not a publicly traded company. You have no idea who's in charge of doing what, where. That's anything that I think is going to be anything I think we think is going to be speculation, anyways. We know who runs things in WWE. That's Vince McMahon. Under him is Triple H. In AEW, we assume it's Tony Khan, who gets no booking help. I have a hard time believing that Tony Khan books everything. I think he kind of does it the same way Vince McMahon probably did it, which is that he looks over the stuff, okays things, changes things as he wants. He's too busy. I think he's just too busy to do everything on his own, despite the fact of what everyone thinks. I don't know if it's Tony Khan. I think that the booking in general is holding AEW back. If you want to attribute the booking specifically to Tony Khan, then there's your answer. But I can't speculate on who's doing 100% of the booking and who's doing the booking I don't like.
Okay. No, I don't think Tony Khan is specifically doing the booking. I think his influence hinders it. I think like you said, he does kind of like Vince McMahon, but I think his lack of understanding of how to run a wrestling business is also what
in the grand scheme of things, if you look at it in the big picture, which is very simple, Tony Khan is a man in charge. Tony Khan has his name on all the checks. Tony Khan has his name on the buildings and all the properties and everything else. So when it fails, or if it fails, or if there's a problem, you have to come back to the guy who's in charge, which is Tony Khan. Whether that means he has to hire a new booker, or he has to hire a new committee, or if he has to change the booking, if he has to change the booking before he's booking it, that's his fault at the end of the day. So I guess at the end of the day, I guess it is his fault. The same way when things go bad, it's Vince McMahon's fault.
Okay.
That's what I can look at. I mean, honestly, I can't pinpoint Tony directly, but he's the one in charge. He's the one who would be making changes if there's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Okay, I see both your arguments, and to say something about Ricky Stark that Hykiri brought up. Personally, I've personally worked with him, and I think he's a talent that is very underutilized at AEW. So I'll agree with you on that for sure. Okay, so uh, the next question is looking at wrestling as a whole from WWE to the Indies. Has wrestling suffered because of an increase in what some people believe is undersized talent? And I'm talking size wise, like, height, weight, everything.
Absolutely not. I don't know what to say other than that. Like, you don't have to have a giant the size of Andre to tell a good story. And if that's the case, then maybe you should be in wrestling.
Okay.
Wrestlers have been around since 1990 whatever, in like 1885, 1985 or whatever it is.
I don't think the size of a wrestler is the problem in wrestling. I think it's the style. Everybody wants a wrestler, no matter the size, to be flipping around like Ricochet, and you'll never see that from guys the size of Omos. But it
We're talking
doesn't
giant
mean
rocks.
exactly. It doesn't mean that Omos can't be a superstar. I mean, I don't personally see it, but I think with training, he can be better than what he is. But right now, the mold of a superstar, I mean, is Roman Reigns. It is MJF. And fans expect wrestlers to do the same thing that those wrestlers do, and that's not everybody's style. And some guys shouldn't be trying to do that. And they can still put good shows. For instance, Drew Gulak. He's a great cruiserweight wrestler, but he doesn't fly. But he's an amazing technical and submissionist. Same for Regal's son. I forget his name, but no NXT, Again, he doesn't fly, but he's a great technician. So I think wrestlers need to understand more of what their style is for their
Mm-hmm.
size instead of trying to use their size to do things that Rey Mysterio can do. And not everybody can do that.
Okay. Those were both really good answers too, because some people, you have some people that say wrestlers should still look like, you know, how they look back in, old school style wrestling with,
I would very much
bigger,
point out to those guys who want to see them. I
yeah,
would just point out Diesel. It's very simple.
yeah,
Diesel almost killed the business for WWE when he was champion for a year, and he was the biggest man wrestling at the time.
exactly. So wrestling as a whole, you have to have certain levels with certain talent doing two different things. So y'all both gave really good answers to that one. All right, so has the audience changed so much that conventional good guy and bad guy roles even matter anymore?
I think for the hardcore fan, they can still show the difference between heels and faces, but I think it's when you come in as a new fan and you see guys like MJF who's telling really good heel promos, but the crowd's cheering him. Same for Roman Reigns. He's a heel, or when he says his line, acknowledge me, the crowd pops. So I think it's a little bit harder for wrestlers to even do their role, whether it's a heel or a face, because the crowd, it just makes it that hard.
Okay.
I like how you think that wrestling fans have changed at all in the last 30 years. The average age of the WWE fan, AEW is probably not very different. 56% of their fans are age 35 and up. Which means that a lot of them were watching the Attitude Era and haven't changed since.
Okay.
um, bad guy versus good guy is always going to be one of the best ways to tell a story. It's hard to tell the same story over and over, which is why you don't always tell it. Which why you always don't always tell it. I think more important than having a bad guy versus good guy situation is that you have to. It has to make sense why someone's a bad guy and why someone's a good guy. More than is it important if they are a good guy or bad guy. Like their motivations have to be clear, more than they have to be just an asshole.
Yeah, without a really good bad guy, you're good. You don't really have a
Right.
good guy.
I
Like you
mean,
can't a
look
track.
back at a match like what's his name, Bret Hart and Roddy Piper, and they were both good guys in that match.
Mm-hmm.
They went both of them as good guys, and during the match, you had Roddy playing more of a heel than normal, and then they both shook hands and left a match. But it was an incredible match, and it was an incredible build and everything. You know, like you don't have to have a bad guy in a match to make it for it to be a good match.
Right.
It just tends to be like those just tend to be the ones you remember more.
Yeah, and I mean, for another example is Brett versus Austin when
Yeah.
he
And they
passed
did
out.
the double flip.
Yeah, and when he passed out in the sharpshooter with the bludger, that's what switched from Austin being a
Yep.
heel to the most loved, guy during the. So you have those moments where the audience sees it for something that's different. So, but speaking of MJF, which I don't watch a lot of AEW, but I fucking love that guy. Uh, should heels be allowed to drop their heel persona when they are not when they're not on TV? So if they're out in the world, should they be obligated to keep that persona to drive the audience to think, well, this guy's really an asshole, or should they be allowed to just be, the everyday person as you would see them on the street?
I just got finished watching the biography of the Iron Sheik from A&E. Very good, and I know it's meandering, but the point is more that if it went over again where the curtain was drawn back when they found Hacksaw and the Sheik together driving around with a whole bunch of cocaine in their car. And my point is though that this is not 1985 anymore. This is not 1980s anymore. I think people understand that MJF is not really an asshole in real life, whether he portrays it all the time or not. And while it is interesting, while it is fun to watch a wrestler who's so dedicated to his craft that he's always a heel, I think the reason that people love MJF is because they know it's a character, as opposed to them knowing that instead of being a guy who legitimately just hates everybody. Otherwise, he would never get a single cheer. Do we need to have people like that? No, I don't think people live. I don't think we need people to live kayfabe. I think kayfabe was a really big problem for families in general. So going back to that is like a step backward. I think in wrestling in general.
I
Interesting, but
disagree. Oh, sorry.
I don't think everyone needs it. Go ahead, Hykiri.
I'm complete opposite on this. I think kayfabe is what made wrestling. I love The Undertaker because he was dead. He was this ghostly, unimaginable beast of a man that could walk on rope and not be that size. And he would get hit with an F5 and sit right up in the middle of the ring. Or as Sting was this great old visionary that came after the bad guys. I think a wrestler should always portray their character, even when they're not on TV. I think being that asshole all day long is what makes MJF. MJF. If I went up to MJF and said, hey, give me an autograph, and he told me yes, I'd be so disappointed.
Well,
I
he
would
probably
want
wouldn't
him,
give you an
yeah,
autograph. He'd probably make fun of you on the way, but he would give
yes.
you an autograph.
Give me a cripple joke.
Yeah,
Make
sure.
fun of my wheelchair. Be that asshole. That's what makes the bad guy. Like when Daniel Bryan told that kid, in the front row, he's glad his wheelchair broke. That was great. I mean, he died after. But it was still great. When wrestlers and be that persona. I think it's just great. I think it's the internet's fault that kayfabe is dead. But kayfabe is what built wrestling. Even in the indies, like when Sean's dad turned on his partner in a cage match, I believe. Dude, when that
Mhm.
crowd erupted, it's just crazy to see that. To see that natural hate or cheer for a person, that's what wrestling is. It's like a real opera. And I think a lot of wrestlers just don't do that anymore because at the end of the day, they want them to be liked. There's no more, Iron Sheiks or Jake the Snakes. Everybody wants to be liked. Whereas guys like MGF just try to be hated. And he's a heel. So you should hate him. So I think we need kayfabe.
I'm gonna counter that fully in one way by saying that guys like Jake the Snake, guys like MJF, guys like Iron Sheik are one, if not 0.1% of the industry that they're in.
Well, yeah, of
And
course.
requiring everyone to be part of kayfabe means that you have a giant section of the wrestlers in general, who can't make money off of themselves, and they have to be reliant on AEW, WWE, indie bookings, whatever, without being able to sell their own name or sell their own merch or sell anything like that, because they're required to be part of kayfabe. How can you watch it? How could you go onto Twitch, for example, and watch someone be a complete asshole to all his viewers, and
I would
still
totally do
as
it.
part of what it is? So it's like you have to kind of like be like that. You have to kind of like look at where we are in the world nowadays, where it's like, oh, being a wrestler is not the greatest money in the world. Sometimes they need to make their money on their side as well. So in that regard, having kayfabe be 100% all the time is only going to hurt wrestlers. Even if it makes other parts of the business better.
I disagree. I think if a wrestler is unable to sell their product, that's not on kayfabe. That means you're not ready to be in this league. These guys built their names from ground up,
So like a guy
off
like
of
Undertaker
nothing.
never had to use Twitch. It
Right.
wasn't available to him at the time. But in this day and age, for someone like the Undertaker to not be at the top of the game and get paid the top money, how could he be on Twitch going, "Hey guys, sub with me," or "Let's play this game or play that game"? We just gonna be on Twitch, just looking at the camera and saying nothing, and going
Well,
rest
that's my
in
point,
peace
though.
every 30 minutes.
With a guy like The
Like,
Undertaker,
but I'm just
I
saying, like
would never
that would
want.
work with Undertaker. No one would watch that.
Well, that's
No
the
one's gonna watch
point.
Undertaker play that. That's
If
just
he
be a
was,
joke.
that's the point, though. I would never want to see somebody like The Undertaker, playing Twitch or playing a game on Twitch. I don't want to see, if they were true, to their character, they know then that would be bad for their character. And that would help their image. And they wouldn't do
Well, let me step in and kind of separate you guys.
it.
As someone who like my dad was an indie wrestler. He was an indie guy my entire life, and he's one of the last journeymen of indie wrestling. He was 90% a heel, 90% of his career. Did he make money at it? Yes, but he didn't make it from, as some would see it, as the merch side. When he took bookings, he said, "This is my price. If you want that, if you want me, then you're gonna pay this amount of money. If not, then I'll go find someone else that will." And he got paid what he put out, because he was that heel. If you were gonna hire him to be the heel, he was not gonna have one person cheer you.
Right.
So I can see it from that side, but I can also see it from the other side as well. Is, there are other ways to supplement your income if you are a heel. So you can, you can keep the persona, but eventually somebody's gonna find out that you're not really that guy.
Right.
So it's almost like method acting. Ric Flair is Ric Flair all the time.
Correct.
So
For better or worse, I guess.
for better or worse. And even Ric Flair would tell you that. So, all right. So the next question is, and this one just goes from the topic because it's controversial right now in politics as well.
So you
Should
want to get canceled?
should transgender women such as Nyla Rose be allowed to wrestle biological women under the banner of women's wrestling?
Oh, you Shin.
I mean, I don't have this kind of like problem with it. Like, I know it's controversial. My opinion is pretty simple. It's especially in wrestling, the most predetermined thing in the world, the soap opera of our world. Like, why is like I don't see why this should be an issue even in wrestling. Like, I understand why the question's coming up. I don't know what to say. Like, it's wrestling. If you want to put a man in a wig and say that he's a woman and put him and wrestle with a woman, that's you can do that as well. It's wrestling. We've already seen that. That was literally Santina Morella like 20 years ago. But I have no problem with Nyla Rose. I have no problem. I don't think of Nyla Rose as a man. I think of Nyla Rose as a woman who competes in the women's division. If your question is, should she be able to compete in the women's division as a woman? Yes. Like,
Okay.
In professional wrestling, I think using a woman who was formerly a man to fight other women is not really a problem because the rest is predetermined. It's not going to have an impact on the outcome of anything. I think it's more of a problem in actual sports, but in sports entertainment and in most wrestling, it's not really a problem. I don't really think. I mean, like Shin said, you had Santino, you had Beth Phoenix, now you have Rhea Ripley, who's going to fight all dominant battles, for him. And she's a woman, so.
I mean, I can go back
Yeah,
further. I could
so.
say Barry Horowitz if you prefer as well.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
really
I
see
mean,
the problem in pro wrestling.
in the terms of wrestling, we've seen men and women wrestle each other. So in wrestling, it's not really a big deal because it's not a real sport. I mean, it is more. It's a physical soap opera. So I don't see it as an issue, but in real sports, it's more of a controversial topic. So I just I just wanted to get other people's take on it. All right, but speaking of predetermined, since you both kind of talked about that, uh, the art of wrestling has changed and matches seem more choreographed. Does that hurt wrestling because it goes from being said that it's predetermined to downright looking fake sometimes?
I think wrestling is trying too much, especially in WWE. They're giving the crowd too much of what they want. Instead of letting the wrestlers go out there, perform a match in styles they're comfortable, wrestling with, instead of trying to make your body, a spot monkey. I think, I don't know if it hurts wrestling. I think if you let wrestlers wrestle their type of match, they could tell a better story, and that would help the business. But I don't really think it hurts it.
Okay.
I don't think it hurts it in any way, honestly enough. You're always if you don't want to watch a choreographed match, as it were, there's always a place to go. Having more different types of wrestling is never going to hurt the business in that regard. If we're saying that every single match was choreographed, then it might be a problem. I think some matches and some wrestlers need to be choreographed more often, personally. And I know you guys are using that in terms of like doing flips and stuff, but I mean, actual matches should be planned out more often. Like, I guess I look at it differently. Like, matches were always kind of choreographed, but I understand not in the same way you guys are trying to explain. I guess like if you go back and look at some of the big matches Bret Hart, Randy Savage. Those guys used to plan out the matches like move for move in advance.
Yeah. So
So
that is a good point too. Yeah, because I mean, people say it looks choreographed. Some say it's fake, but it's all physical in a sense. And even if you sit down and watch Andre the Giant's documentary, Hogan wrote out all of that,
exactly.
so it was written out. Now we say, I think when people use the term choreographed, because I've heard others use it, I think it's more, it seems like they spent all week in the ring working on this match to make it look, and that's why people say it looks choreographed
To be
versus,
fair, there are some wrestlers and some matches that need that.
and
If
there
you
are, there
like, if
are,
you look at some of the women's matches in I know you don't watch AEW. There are some women's matches in AEW that could really benefit from that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
100%.
um, okay, so I'm gonna say we probably have time for what, like two more questions?
Zero on
Yeah,
the question
yeah.
marker.
Okay. So,
Yes.
well, we'll go with talking about spot monkeys and stuff like that. Injuries have always been, a part of wrestling, but is the push to make new innovative moves and high risk moves seem to be more important? Is it becoming problematic in the wrestling business that injuries are going to start to pile up a lot more often?
I mean, I don't really think so. If I think, like, I'm just thinking back to some of the injuries that I've seen happen, what they've come off of. Like, what's her name? I can't remember. Was anyways? Almost tossed Biggie on his neck doing a standard back suplex, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a
Like,
standard.
Yeah, the belly to belly.
what's the girl from AEW there, Chris Statlander? She literally threw out her was it ACL doing a big boot. So I'm not sure if if it's really accurate to say that these new and innovative moves are really doing much more. I think that people should stop landing on their feet and their knees as much personally, but that's just my opinion, my personal opinion. I don't think it's anything more than that. Like if you're not landing directly on your feet and or knees, or sorry, your feet and giving a shock to your knees, I don't think it'll be as bad for some of the injuries. But like a lot of them are just sometimes an accident does happen. Like what was the cause? Like, if you look at Cody Rhodes, what was the cause of his pectoral rip that he had? You know,
Yeah.
Um,
it wasn't caused by him doing a flip.
No, it's in the gym.
Yeah, he overtrained for the most
Yeah.
part. Like I'm
yeah,
just thinking, like, I'm like I know there are examples of like sure people do get hit in certain ways, going through a table and hitting your head on the floor or on the edge of a table for sure is going to hurt and potentially injure you. But like even like Adam Cole, he got injured taking a wasn't it like a lariat? He got injured doing it taking it.
Yeah.
Same for Hangman. He got injured taking a lariat. Like these aren't innovative moves here.
Yeah,
right.
I don't think the style is the problem. I mean, 2 weeks on NXT, Andy Hartwell, took a bump from a top rope moonsault and blew her ankle out. So, it's a standard moonsault. She just, took all the weight. I don't think the move is the problem because you're not really seeing anything different. That's not already seen, just in different variations. But it's basically the same move. I mean, look at Hangman. He moves the clothesline. He just flips first. So it's
Right.
the same move. It's just, I don't think anybody's. I think it's like Shin said. Just slow down a little bit and we'll have less injuries. You
Yeah.
don't need to be going full speed the whole match, every single match. There could be
So
slow
you're saying
spots.
maybe slowing the match down here and there would prevent some injuries from happening.
Definitely.
Yeah. Jim Cornette would hate you guys.
Yes, he would.
Oh, it's okay. The feeling's mutual.
Jim Cornette hates everybody, actually.
There you go.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's the moves themselves. I think it's just accidents happen, but I think Hikiri is right. Slowing down the match would probably allow for less injuries, but you can tear your ACL walking across the lawn and you step in a
yeah.
gopher hole or something.
Yep.
So it's not the moves themselves. I think it's
I'm
I
not
think
behind the scenes, so I can't talk about the conditioning either. I don't know of how the conditioning's been in the last 5 or 10 years. It's possible people just aren't doing the proper conditioning for the moves they want to do. Isn't there issue as well? Like
correct.
but again, the same thing depends what we're talking about here. Like concussions don't come about because you did a flip. It came up because you got your head rocked. So it really depends what we're talking about in the end. And I
Okay.
don't know. Without being behind the scenes, I couldn't tell you any more than that.
All right. So the last question I have for you guys
Sure.
is AEW, ROH, Impact, and New Japan, they've all worked together in one way or another. Do you think that elevates their individual brands, or do you think it might water them down because you're working with other companies and you're all scrambling trying to be, you're trying to be, say your brand is better than the other brand? Does that, do them working together help them, or does it kind of maybe hinder them in some way?
You want me to go first, Hykiri? You want to go
Yeah,
first?
go for it. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
Sure. I think it depends on which company you are. I don't think Impact gets as much of a boost having even Kenny Omega as their champion as AEW does from having. I guess what the last person who came by would be Big Bill to come by and have a match. Same for New Japan Pro Wrestling. They do. I mean, as far as I understand, New Japan Pro Wrestling is very happy with the exposure they get in the United States and the new stars that they can kind of like create in that regard. They apparently they can book bigger, they can book better buildings, and they can get better crowds because of AEW. But I absolutely think that AEW does benefit much more from New Japan and Impact than the other companies do.
Okay.
I think companies like New Japan is getting good exposure, even from the AEW. But I think with AEW buying a brand like Ring of Honor, that Ring of Honor was really bad. I don't see their champion getting good exposure. Like Cesaro, I
Hmm.
mean, he's champion in Ring of Honor, right? Or at
Right.
least he was. But you don't hear about anything he does there. All you hear about is what those Ring of Honor wrestlers are doing in AEW. So I think it depends on how they're running the show. It's helped New Japan a lot, but it's hurt Ring of Honor. So I think it depends on what you're doing with the company. You see both sides there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's fair to call ROH a different brand. Everyone can knows and sees that ROH and AEW are the same company with the same brand. It's like calling
No, I
SmackDown and Raw a
agree,
different brand right now.
but
Yeah.
they're still trying
That's
to make
fine,
it
but
two
as it
brands.
is currently, the
Yes.
brands are not split. There's no real separation between who's in AEW, who's in ROH, which makes it just Raw and SmackDown.
No, I agree
So,
with you.
I don't see ROH as a brand that's suffering. To be fair, it was going to go out of business. So technically speaking, anything Tony Khan does that past closing it is better for what was going to happen in ROH.
He's put ROH in a little bit of a better light than where it was
True.
when. So
But it's just
I
AEW, so I don't see any real difference in that regard either. He's just taking AEW fans and putting them in ROH arenas.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I think eventually if ROH is to stay in business, it will become more like an NXT for
yeah,
EW in the future. And unless they come up with some other alternative plan, if not, then it will probably just go the way of the dodo.
Yeah.
So it'll probably go away.
look, it's very simple. Tony Khan picked up ROH for a very specific reason. He wanted tapes of Kevin Steen. He wanted tapes of Seth Rollins. He wanted tapes of old Bryan Danielson and CM Punk,
Yeah.
He
and he
didn't
wanted to have them for his use.
brand.
And he got it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's kind of when Vince McMahon bought up
WCW and all the Indies tapes.
all the old tapes and
Yeah.
made DVDs, and he won them on the network.
Yep.
He bought Mid South, and then he just kind of chopped it up and put it out there.
100%. Look, anything he does with ROH is great. Like ROH, if you look at ROH from 2001, 2006, it's full of classic, incredible matches. So just having access to that for his own streaming service is already pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
All right, guys. It was fun.
That was fun.
Thank
I
you,
don't know if
Shin.
the questions were any good. It was just
Yeah, they
all
were good.
stuff that, you know.
It's fine. The questions are what they were. I had no problem.
All right. I don't know how we determine who wins.
It's okay.
Hykiri can win this one.
Shin can win. It's fine.
We'll call it a draw.
All right, sounds good. But they don't doesn't have to be always have to be a win and loss. Remember,
It's a
even
tough out.
Minoru Suzuki went to a draw with Daniel Bryanson.
That's right.
All right.
Shin, you going live?
On. I'll catch you a bit
Are
later.
you going live?
And yeah, thank you very much for Mr. Angry Cripple, and you have a great night too. Okay, brother.
You have a good night. Good one.
All right, bye, guys.